I watched every single goal Arsenal conceded this season. Yep, every goal. The things I do for YouTube. As the summer window's about to open, we're all looking to the market for answers this summer, understandably. But before we do that, we need to know the problems we're trying to fix in the first place. Arsenal actually had their highest scoring season in Premier League history last campaign, scoring 88 goals. So the problems are seemingly at the other end. By looking at the goals we conceded, and specifically at patterns, strengths and weaknesses, we can learn where specifically Arsenal were vulnerable last campaign, and clarify our collective thinking about how we try and address that in the market. Clearly, a team is a symbiotic entity that can't be properly understood without a multifactorial analysis, but knowing where the high-value moments went against us in the league is a big part of that. In less fancy terms, I think this is really important. So, in true YouTube style, let's just jump into it! First things first, raw numbers wise, Arsenal conceded 43 goals last season. And here's how that stacks up to the previous 10 seasons, and for a comparison, Man City's numbers over the same time period. We've conceded 43.7 goals on average over the last 10 seasons, while City have conceded 33.1. Mid to low 30s seems like the magic number to be seriously challenging for top honours, but then you do get the odd freak season where City concede 23 goals in a season, and everyone else may as well go home. As good as last season was, we are conceding too many goals to win a title. The highest amount of goals conceded in the last 10 seasons where a team has still won the title was City with 37 in 13-14, nearly a decade ago now, and the average goals conceded to win a title over that entire time is 31.2. We haven't gone below that number since 07-08 when we conceded 31. Captain obvious here, but we need to concede less. It's that simple. We conceded 25 goals at home and 18 away last season, making it 43 in total, which could be another rabbit hole about home and away form, but I won't go there in this video. I'm going to separate the goals we conceded into 6 categories. Those categories are refereeing errors, penalties, individual defensive errors, this will be slightly subjective, but I'll be fairly conservative in my selections, set pieces, individual moments of quality from the opposition, other, i.e. open play. Refereeing errors, I make 3. Luiz's goal should have been ruled out for the obstruction on Ramsdale. Kivior was stood on for Enciso's goal, though should have played on. However, I feel like if your boot has come off, it's fair to stop. And finally, Brentford. No words. These won't be counted in other areas. Arsenal conceded 3 penalties this season, the customary Harry Kane one and 2 from Said Benrahma. I'm pretty sure the Premier League website is wrong, by the way, as I can't remember a 6th penalty after those 3 and the Salah and Bamford ones that were missed, and neither can transfer marked, but maybe we're wrong. 5 penalties conceded would see us tied with Palace and Newcastle in mid-table. Fine, nothing to worry about. Individual defensive errors I count at 8. In chronological order, Saliba's mistake against Leicester, Gabriel against Fulham, Saliba against Brighton, Tomiyasu against City, Zinchenko against Leeds, although that is a bit unfair, Ramsdale against Southampton and Trossard/Ramsdale against Brighton, both of which you could argue are just the ball bouncing, but I think both could do better and I don't see those as structural issues. Across the league, that's a pretty average number, but our benchmark is always City, and according to SofaScore, across Diaz, Ake, Laporte, Edison, Akanji, Walker, Rodri and Stones, they have made 0 errors, but have led to goals between them. Saliba and Gabriel have 2 between them. There's levels to this. Set pieces I count at 6. Lissandro's just counts, I'd say, then Tarkowski, Senesi, Schlupp, Chaleta-Sarr and Stones. We actually didn't concede from a set piece until after the World Cup, and then we conceded 3 in 3 if you count Brentford. This data from The Athletic is from late March, but it shows that offensively we do really well, our 15.7 corners per goal profiling really well across the league, but this one shows the problem. We're conceding from every 20.2 corners, the 6th worst record in the league. I am slightly worried about this one, and I do think it's partly at least down to concentration. Mikel recently name-checked set pieces as something we need to improve on, and I think when we started realising that we might be in a title race, defending set pieces probably felt less important, and our intensity and concentration went. Maybe that's a bit soft factory, but when you look at the set piece goals we did concede, it just feels like the players might think corner kicks are getting in the way of our fun going forward. Individual moments of quality I count at 3. They happen, nothing you can say other than chapeau and move on. The world doesn't revolve around us, and other players can have great moments. Like Rashford at the Emirates, I'd say is an unbelievable bit of quality. Brighton's build-up from Matoma's goal in terms of attacking movement is so good, as is the finish, and I'd say Watkins at Villa Park, who was on a crazy hot streak. Maybe Saliba could do better, but it's more about the elite centre-forward play for me. And finally, other. I think we can learn a lot from this. Goals nominally from open play. I make it 20. Maddison's goal, Antony and Rashford's 2, Firmino and Nunez's goals, Armstrong's goal, Haaland and Grealish's goal, Coutinho, Billing, Firmino and Salah's, Bowen, Walcott, KDB's 2 at the Etihad and Haaland again, Madueke and Awoniyi's. If you'd like to see me assess every single one of those 20 goals in detail with game footage, you can check out the bonus content to this video on Patreon or by signing up to become a channel member for just £3 a month for that and loads of other benefits. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to be taking a slightly broader look. I think those goals point us towards 4 main areas of improvement. I think we can get marginally better at defending in behind, and I think we can see that in Nunez and Grealish's goals at the Emirates. Playing such a high line, we obviously take a risk, especially against the top teams. Against Liverpool, I felt there were a number of warning signs that we needed to be slightly more conservative with our line out of possession, especially with such a talented passer of the ball like Trent in the opposition that we didn't take, and we finally got punished by Nunez. This may have been an instruction. And against City, they punished the space in behind, and I think Jorginho's too slow to anticipate the ball into Haaland and close the space. There were also lots of times over the season where we were nearly punished. I've put this first as it's probably the least of my concerns, and against City we didn't have Partey. We're also dealing with the best of the best. At some point you have to accept that they're just good at football, and you're going to get punished across the 38 league games if you play a line like that. The benefits way outweigh the pitfalls. It's about anticipation and communication, and both of those take time and consistency. I think we can get a bit better at transition control, and I think we can see that for Rashford's 2 at Old Trafford, De Bruyne's 2 at the Etihad, Coutinho's goal and Billing's goal. This one is heavily related to setup, as for example at the Etihad we were trying to stop the entry pass and left space in behind for one of the best players in the world, but I still think our anticipation, stepping in early and stopping the transition is somewhere we can look to grow. This situation here with wrong profile is the perfect example. You have to delay the player here, even if you don't get the ball or you're dead. This, for me, is about profile selection. The links to Declan Rice really excite me in this regard. He has some of the best defensive anticipation in world football, almost like he's seen the game before. I imagine having someone centrally of his quality will not only reduce the amount we get transition through, but also allow us to take more risks further forward. This is also key out wide. For me, Jorginho has to step in earlier before the ball gets to Coutinho, but we know his deficiencies on the transition. Our left side is also a concern, and I think we can see that in a number of goals that came from exploiting space on our left-hand side, as Zinchenko had vacated it. And I think you can see that in the goals from Maddison, Antony, Bowen, Madueke, Firmino, and Haaland's goal at the Emirates. Naturally, when you have a defender who comes inside, there's going to be vulnerability in the gap they've left. Gabriel is terrific at defending out wide and has done a very good job at covering for Zinchenko, but there's a limit to what he can do, and there's also just moments of individual quality where Zinchenko turns off or gets done, like the goals for Madueke and Firmino. The Maddison one is particularly poor. Zinchenko gets dragged inside when there's already players there and misses Maddison's run. Some of this is Zinchenko's decision making, knowing when to go and when to stay, as he discusses in a great interview with Adrian Clark on Arsenal.com, but some of this I think is about having more options in that area. Being able to invert on both sides, as well as having a more defensive-minded fullback like Kivior, might really help us. And as I mentioned in a previous video, lots of teams try and attack us down our left-hand side. Our right-hand side is very solid. Most of our goals come down our right-hand side, and most of our goals conceded come down our left. The final thing is about adding quality and developing talent. I think you see that for Haaland at the Etihad, Armstrong's goal, and Salah and Firmino's goals. For all of those goals, moments of individual quality either side decide it. Foden's take and turn, Tomiyasu getting dragged around, Salah's instincts, and Ramsdale defending his post, as well as the run from Firmino. We have to accept that the floor in this team has to increase, and the ceiling has to be broken through. With where we are, against the top teams, we need to develop and add the talent that turns the tide, and we need to allow space for the talent we do have to make the mistakes that can make them better. This isn't one of the 4, but another small concern I have is about Ødegaard giving the ball away in midfield. We were punished heavily for it with Awoniyi and Walcott's goals in the final games of the season, of course, but it's something Ødegaard needs to have a look at, I think. I'm not a UEFA Pro licensed coach with tens of years of experience, so I'm not going to tell Martin Ødegaard how to get better at football, but it is a pattern I can see starting to develop, which I hope gets resolved. So there you go, a full rundown of how we conceded all of our goals last season. Realistically, what this all tells me is that the club are targeting the right kind of talent this summer. We need a central midfielder with a slight left-sided bias who has great defensive anticipation and transition control, and we need intelligent, athletic defenders who can continue to develop and understand the space in behind them. Or maybe we could get a guy who does both. Please, Declan. Please.